Hello, I'm Naksu Zheng from NAVER Cloud Platform. This is the first brown bag session as we open up 2023. For today's brown bag session, we're going to talk about backup, which can protect important data in the midst of various accidents, such as the recent fire incident at an IDC. We named this session Backup for Data Recovery in Case of Emergency. Now, let's take a look at what we'll learn. First, we'll discuss what backup is and why it is necessary. First of all, we know that backup is not just simply copying or compressing and storing files. Its purpose is recovery. Therefore, rather than simply copying the file, how quickly you can perform recovery using the file is a very important factor. So, when it comes to backup, we have two very important strategies, which are RPO, Recovery Point Objective, and RTO, Recovery Time Objective. In other words, how quickly we can restore our service when data is lost, or an accident occurs, and how well we can maintain our service continuity, are very important factors. Therefore, it is very important not only to simply store the data, but also to find which method we need to use to quickly restore it within the target time. We brought a few examples. Recently, there was a fire incident at an IDC. In fact, the IDC incident is a very rare example. It is very unusual for an IDC to have problems like fire or accidents. But I can't say that it never happens. It happens every once in a long while. When there is a problem with an IDC, its impact is huge. Data may also be lost due to hacking. Hackers may use something like ransomware to encrypt data and demand money for decryption. The original purpose of BitLocker is to protect your data safely from external hackers, but hackers sometimes turn it around and use BitLocker to encrypt your data and demand money for decryption. Even at this time, if you have backed up data, you can delete the data encrypted by ransomware, virus, or hackers using BitLocker and restore it with the latest data. System crash is another thing that frequently happens. When there is an issue in the OS, or a blue screen appears, data may be lost, and in serious cases, you may not be able to boot it up to retrieve the data inside. While there's a wide range of possibilities, human error is the most common cause. Because of an incorrect operation by the user, data may be lost, or a system crash may occur. At this time, if data is lost, you must have a backup to restore important data. In a way, backup is similar to car insurance for your car. I personally had to renew my car insurance recently, and every time I renew, I feel like I'm wasting my money on the insurance premium. I haven't had an accident, and I don't think I'll have an accident in the future, either. I still get insured, though, even if I'm confident I won't have an accident. In the unlikely event of an accident, then I'll have to bear a huge cost if I don't get any help from insurance. Therefore, when you own a car, you always get auto insurance. It's the same for backup. A certain cost may occur for backups. However, these costs are actually very low compared to the value of the data compared to the problems that may occur later, and the cost to solve them. Also, one of the things many of you often confuse is the difference between backup and archiving. Usually, we copy the data in a certain directory in a Linux server or a Windows server somewhere. In the case of photos, I also copy them to several hard disks. This is to get the data from another disk, even if a disk fails. However, strictly speaking, this is archiving. I have data that I've copied, and this data can be imported and used at any time. I can store or import the data and use it similarly to the storage I have. This is what archiving is. Backup is storing data for the purpose of recovery in case it is damaged. This backup data is not retrieved unless the data is damaged. Because the nature of backup is different, as it was done on tapes in the past, and it is sometimes done off-site, you can't access and use the backup data like you do for normal data. That's how backup and archiving differ. You need to be able to distinguish these aspects. So, what we're going to discuss today is backup. Backup refers to storing data for the purpose of restoring it when the data is damaged or lost. If you take a look at the types of backups, full backups are the most well-known type, and we also have incremental backups and differential backups, which we will explain later. In fact, there are numerous types of backups derived from these. But today, I'd like to explain only about full backups, incremental backups, and differential backups. Here, we have a storage. It had 10 terabytes of data on day 1. On the next day, the data increased by 1 terabyte to 11 terabytes. On day 3, it increased by 1 terabyte again to 12 terabytes, and the same on day 4, to 13 terabytes. If you get the full backup of these every day, you will have 10 terabytes, 11 terabytes, 12 terabytes, and 13 terabytes, backed up individually. Then, the capacity of the backup storage where the backups for 4 days are stored will be 46 terabytes. The good thing about full backups is that you can restore based on when the backup was created. Therefore, for your data on day 3, you can restore it right away using the backup for day 3. While it has the advantage of quick and convenient recovery, it requires a very large capacity of 46 terabytes in total, as you can see. Next up, we have incremental backups. For incremental backups, if there was 10 terabytes on day 1, it backs up only the increased capacity on days 2, 3, and 4, respectively. So, with full backup on day 1, and 1 terabyte each on days 2, 3, and 4, you only need a total capacity of 13 terabytes. Therefore, its advantage is that it saves a lot of backup space. On the other hand, it also has disadvantages. When I'm trying to restore the data for day 3, I'd first need a full backup for day 1. as well as the incremental backup for day 2. Then, I need to restore the incremental backup for day 3, which means I'll need to perform recovery 3 times. I can only get the data I want after restoring the data sequentially. So, it slightly increases the time it takes to restore. Next, we have differential backups. For differential backups, when we have 10 terabytes of data on day 1, and it increases by 1 terabyte on day 2, the increased 1 terabyte is backed up on day 2. When it increases again by 1 terabyte on day 3, the data for day 2 is ignored, and the difference from the full backup, which would be 2 terabytes, is backed up. In the same way on day 4, only the data that has changed based on the full backup is backed up, which would be now 3 terabytes. Thus, the total capacity of backups will be 16 terabytes, which is slightly larger than incremental backups. On the other hand, while it may not be as fast as full backups, the good thing is that you only need the backup for day 4, after restoring the full backup first, rather than having to restore the data for day 3, before restoring the data for day 4. So, restoring to the desired point in time is much easier and faster. Most backup methods are based on one full backup like this, and then use incremental backups, differential backups, or various other derived backup methods. In recent years, these backups have been largely developing into directions. The first focuses on the perspective of data security, on how data can be effectively protected. A lot of progress is being made in this area. Another direction focuses on reducing capacity. It aims to simplifying the data using various effective compression algorithms, and removing duplicates, rather than getting each increment backed up as is, even when you're getting full backups, incremental backups, or differential backups. Since this is a brown bag session, we're going to not only cover NAVER Cloud Platform products, but also the basic concepts of these backups and how you can backup in general, services, as well as in NAVER Cloud Platform. First, we'll take a look at how we can backup in Windows. By default, Windows servers are not equipped with backup. So, starting with Windows Server 2003, it allows expansion of features through roles and features. From select features, you need to activate a feature called Windows Server Backup. Then, additional installation will proceed. After the additional installation, you can perform Windows admin backups. If you look on the right side, you can see the backup schedule, backup once, and recover menus. Backup schedule allows you to backup based on schedule, and backup once refers to a one-time backup. From recovery, you can restore using the backup data. Backup in Windows is not difficult. All you need to do is additionally install a feature called Windows Server Backup, and reserve a backup schedule in Windows Backup Admin. In Linux, server open source backups are available, but tar is actually the most commonly used. along with crontab. tar is a program that plays the role of compressing and binding data together, and crontab is a program that puts tasks into a schedule and runs them on time. So, we'll use the tar command to compress and bind the files together first. When you do this, the G option is absolutely necessary. First, you need to create a file list using the G option. Then, when additional tar compression is performed, only the files that have been changed or added will be added to the compressed file. Here, you can set a scheduler so that periodic backups can be performed using crontab. So in Linux, you can use tar and crontab for backups. If you perform backups in Windows or Linux, like this on the server, there's something you need to be careful about. The backup drive, the storage for storing backup data, must be configured as a separate partition. If you don't manage this disk separately and have regular files and backup files together, it becomes very difficult to take out this backup data when the disk is damaged. Likewise in Linux, if you store the backup data on additional storage, you can use the detach-attach feature, which is a disk feature of the cloud, to easily connect to other servers and reduce the time it takes for restoring. Otherwise, too much cost will be incurred to extract the backup data. So far, we've looked at file backups. Another important thing is database backups. Database backups can't be done like regular file backups. If you back up that way, then it's highly likely that it won't be backed up properly. This is because the database constantly reads and writes data. There is no problem with reading, but writing is the problem. Some type of data is constantly entered. If the backup proceeds at the moment the data is being entered, the backup will inevitably fail. This is because the DBMS has a write lock. If you try to access files with the write lock on, you won't be able to access files normally. So, for open files that are generally open, the reason for the red failure is because something is locked like this. So generally, you'd need to use a backup program provided by DBMS. MySQL, MS SQL, and Oracle all have their own backup programs. You have to use these backup programs to set the write lock, backup data, and release the write lock again. Therefore, you have to back up with the write lock set, so that you can restore perfectly with this data later. For MySQL, the most well-known backup program is miscalldump. While you have these backup programs, you can also use backup solutions like Veritas or NetVault. Using these backup solutions, you can perform backups with a wider range of options. Then, why would you need backup solutions? You could think backing up in Windows or Linux, as you saw earlier, would be enough. If you're wondering if there are reasons you should get backups through the cloud or using backup solutions, of course there are. First, it's because you need a flexible backup policy and convenience. It is very important to manage the storage where the backed up data is stored. What if the data you backed up is lost? What if the storage where your backup data is stored has poor performance? It's not easy to manage the storage, and you need to pay attention to managing the capacity of large-scale data. If you want to manage these things easily, or increase the convenience of managing the backup files, you should use these backup solutions. Second, perfect recovery must be guaranteed for backups, as they're done to be restored. When you use backup solutions, you can get reports on whether the backup was successful, or why a specific file was not backed up, so that you can view the report and make adjustments to perform backups again. However, if you back up directly in Windows or Linux, these things will be difficult. Backups exist for recovery, and the recovery needs to be perfect. So, for perfect recovery, these type of report feature and guarantee are needed. Also, if you simply store the backed up data somewhere, a problem may occur on the storage where it's stored. Therefore, you should configure it so that your valuable data can be restored at any time, even if a problem occurs in a specific region or zone, using methods such as vault backups or cross-zone backups. When necessary, you need to use vault backups. NAVER Cloud Platform supports vault backups and cross-zone backups, so your data is stored more stably. In NAVER Cloud Platform, two major types of backup services are provided, which are file system backups and database backups. Your data, logs, and web sources would be subject to these backups. So, file system backup is the method that is used when you want to back up important data created as files, such as sources, general data, or logs. For database backup, fully managed DBMS services provided by NAVER Cloud Platform, such as CloudDB for MS SQL, are backed up on their own. So, rather than a CloudDB, if you want to back up the data of a DBMS, you install directly on the server, or a database that you configured on a bare metal server. Database backup is used. Currently, MS SQL, MySQL, and PostgreSQL are supported. Now, let's take a look at how you can perform backups in Windows, Linux, and NAVER Cloud Platform. I'll go ahead and demonstrate what I've explained and show how you can actually configure them. Let's start with Windows Backup first. Here, I've logged in through the terminal. Under Server Manager, activate Backup from the list of features. Watch and follow me. Under Features, you can see Windows Backup Server, Windows Server Backup here. I'm going to select this and install it. It's not installed by default. After installing, you can see the screen like this if you go to Windows Backup Admin. You can use Backup Schedule if you want periodic backups, backup once for a one-time backup, and recovery for data recovery. Now, let's try backing up based on a schedule. I've configured a few types of settings. I'm going to use this to back up program data, users document directory, and downloads, and proceed like this. Next, you can set the time the backups are done. Then, you need to set where you're going to store them. You can also use a shared disk such as NAS. I'm going to store them here. Like this, you can easily set backups with the mouse on Windows. Next, let's try it on Linux. I'm going to create a directory called work, and back up this directory. I'm going to go into a directory called data, and create files. I'll use the touch command to create files, like so. Now, let's back up these files. I'll create a backup of these two files in the work directory here. Use the tar command, and the G option is important. Let's create a backup list in the work directory. Now, all files have been created here, along with a backup list. Here, I'm going to create an additional file, and it is now created. You can create new files like this, and update file content. Using tar, you can compress and group files together, just like this. Next, you can create backup schedules using cron tab. If you want to perform backups at a specific time, you can use cron tab to run the backup script file at a specific time. You can create it like this. Once you create a backup script like this, it will run at midnight. Lastly, let's try backing up in NAVER Cloud Platform. Here, if you go to the NAVER Cloud Platform console, you'll see backup under the storage category. The very first task you need to perform is creating a backup resource. Go to Resource, and you need to create a resource. By resource, it refers to specifying the backup source, such as a server resource. Let's name the resource name as data, and select the server. Next, we need to install an agent on this server. So, we need to enter the ID and password for agent installation. For this, we need a one-time ID and password. Once you create the resource, the agent is installed on the specific server. Once it's installed, now you need to create the storage from the storage field. This is the storage for storing backup files. Let's name it Backup Demo, and create it here. Next, you can set the number of days you want to store it from policy. Here, it's set to 14 days. When creating a policy, you can specify the storage period, which means the number of days the backup file is stored. Now, go to Job, and then select which data you want to backup. You can select the server where files to be backed up are stored from resource, and then set which data you'll back up from Job. You need to set where to store backup files. Here, it's set to Backup Demo. You can set your storage policy here. Once you've done this, you're done. Lastly, you'll be setting the schedule, which determines your backup cycle. If you take a look here, NAVER Cloud Platform provides only two types of backups by default: full backups and incremental backups. So first, you need to get a one-time full backup. You can set up full backups once a week like this, and then set daily incremental backups like this. This requires two schedules, one for full backups and another for incremental backups. That way, you can get daily backups. Lastly, remote backups are done off-site. If it's important data and you want to keep this data more safely, then you can use Vault Backups to store your data more safely. Once backups are done normally, you can check succeeded jobs, failed jobs, and data usage from the dashboard. So here, you'll be able to check when it started, when it ended, etc. That's all for our look at various types of backups. Backups provided in NAVER Cloud Platform, and how you can perform backups on Windows or Linux. I hope your data will become safer and more secure this year. This has been Nak Sujeng for the first Brown Bag session in 2023 about backup. Thank you.